welcome to We Speak Loud podcast. And my mission is to help people find their voices and have them share their story. And would you like to share briefly about your where you come from and what's your name?
Oh yeah, sure. So my name is Ngoh. I'm an LMFT, which is I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm located in Southern California. I've been licensed for around 3 years, and I guess my story is more of like how I ended up being a therapist or kind of working the field I am, especially with like the stigma and like mental health when it comes to like Asians.
Awesome. So what got you into this field?
Um, I've always been good at talking to people, and I've always been that person where people would always come to me for like problems and advice. And I never thought I could be a career out of it because the idea of like I didn't exist to me, you know. And it wasn't until I was in community college, I kind of was really going nowhere in life, and I had this teacher, a communications class actually. I fell asleep in her class. And then I woke up and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was just tired, you know? And she goes, you're not tired, you're depressed. And I was like, I don't even heard that word before. And I was like, what? No, I'm not. And so for a year and a half after class, I would go to her office almost every morning and we would have discussions. I would argue and have these debates. And because of her, I just realized that, you know, I had some like mental health issues, or so I had some struggles in my life that I wasn't really addressing. And because of her, who gave me that support, who kind of heard me, that where I feel like I was heard for the first time, it helped me kind of be like, okay, well, I want to be able to give back to what someone did for me. Like kind of be that voice that I needed when I was at that age.
That's really awesome. Did you say you were in high school?
No, this was in community college, actually.
College. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome, and that happened to me as well. Like they told me that you have anxiety. When I told them I have a breathing problem, and I thought it was maybe asthma related, because it's been like this throughout all my high school years. I had this shortness of breath, and I didn't know until community college. They told me that I have anxiety. I'm like, what? I don't have anxiety. Like I didn't even know what anxiety was until I realized when I reflected back to my past. I was like, oh, all those breathing problems I had, the shortness of breath, they were all related to anxiety.
Yeah, actually, fun fact, statistics show that, especially with Asian Americans, just Asian in general, we manifest our emotions more physically than everybody else. Because we don't talk about emotions, we don't ever kind of speak about these things. Studies have shown that we have a tendency to kind of manifest it forward. For example, like I don't really feel anxious, but I feel when I feel anxious, it's in my calves. So I don't realize I'm anxious until I check my calves and they're like on fire. They're really tight because I'm just holding in that tension. So it's interesting. You can kind of consider like, if you don't get your emotions out, it's going to come out one way or another.
Yeah, that makes really total sense, because what I realized that me and my brother, we will bite our nails, and that's a form of anxiety. I didn't even realize it until we discussed about this. And biting my nails, and then like doing like little things that like it's like shaking my leg a lot, especially when I had to go up and speak during presentation in school. My legs would shake uncontrollably.
Yeah.
And so that's the form of anxiety, and we just don't know that, but our body is telling us like we are anxious.
Yeah, we're very disconnected from our mind and body. It's like we call it the psychosomatic. And by connecting the two together, it really helps you kind of identify what's going on. Because sometimes we don't know what we're feeling, but we know what our body is feeling. And that's like sometimes can kind of be it kind of helps us determine or let us know what's really going on. It's like subconsciously.
Yeah, and then one thing, like also like with Asian Americans, when you can't express yourself, it's like a balloon. This is like example I use all the time. It's like a balloon. You put all that air in the balloon, and then there's no way that the balloon the air is gonna release, because you keep putting too much air in the balloon, and then it just explodes. And so I can go from really a passive, and then can go to aggressive like really quickly. I hold so much inside, I suppress it, and then like you just have to let go of that air from the balloon one step at a time to release whatever's inside.
Yeah, it's because again, we're not taught how to regulate our emotions, like since a young age. We learn from what our parents say, or like, oh, you're sad or you're angry, go work, or do this or do that, distract yourself. And that is actually pretty decent advice for an adult or for someone who actually understands emotions or understand like how they're feeling. But to a child who doesn't understand what they're even experiencing or what's happening, all they see is they're being shut down. So they find a way to deal with it. And that's what our body does. Our mind, like the mind protects you. That's what your mind, that's the sole purpose of your mind is to protect you. It keeps you alive. You yourself are responsible for your own happiness. And I think people kind of forget that because like trauma is just your body protecting itself.
Yeah, that's what you said is just on point because that's how we all feel. Like when we can't express ourselves, we tend to shut down and then suppress our feelings. I would cry all the time. My mom always told me, "Why are you like a big baby? Like why are you always crying?" I'm
Yeah.
crying because like I guess because like crying helps me relieve whatever's inside, but I don't know how to communicate it to her.
Yeah. Also, like, we don't understand, we're not taught different emotions. We're not taught, like, anxiety is good and it's bad. Someone who is about to present, one person is feeling excited, anticipation, another person is feeling nervous and stressed. They're both anxiety. But it's how you identify that anxiety and kind of separate it. You know, like, for example, like, there's different forms of depression or sadness, grief, depression, resentment. Those are different emotions. They're all within the umbrella of maybe depression and sadness, but there's different levels to it. And if we're not taught how to organize or to identify what it is, everything just goes to depression. So that's all you feel then.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Do you think that because a lot of us can't express ourselves, do you think that kind of relates to why so many kids these days have ADHD too?
Um, Not, I wouldn't say so because a lot of kids would struggle with ADHD because we are addicted to our cell phones. That's just fact. Our cell phones are designed with flashing lights and colors to constantly give us our brain stimuli. And because of that, we're used to that instant gratification. We're used to it now, especially with the, like past millennials. They never grew up without like the idea of like dial-up or Windows 95 or like the brick phone, Nokia phones. They don't understand the way, like the way, how it takes time. You have to be patient with that. So they haven't like never learned how to like sit with themselves and just deal with like boredom or just sit with doing nothing. So because of that, and this generation where they're constantly being exposed to stimuli, it's harder and harder for them to just like read a book or focus to pay attention. I wouldn't say not being able to express yourself, from my knowledge, has any correlation with ADHD.
Okay, got it. Because I have ADHD and I didn't know this until last year. And I did listen to someone speak on Instagram, like it was a little reel, and it talked about like stress. Like stress, something induces that child development to create like these problems when they grow older or something like that.
That is possible. I also have ADHD, so I understand what you're talking about. Stress can create problems for you, like because you feel stressed and you don't know how to handle it. If you never learn how to handle these stressful moments, it can create issues. Is it specifically ADHD or difficulty with focusing? That's kind of hard to say because to be ADHD, you have to fit certain criteria within the DSM-5.
Got it. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it's I'm glad that I'm not the only one that has ADHD. You have ADHD, and
Oh
so
yeah.
like, when did you like figure out that you have ADHD?
I've always struggled with focusing and attention. I mean, I was like an A student until like third grade, then I became nothing but a C student, and I never understood why. My parents put me through tutoring and all the things. It just didn't work because I couldn't focus. I couldn't pay attention. Nothing was stimulating my brain. I was constantly distracted by everything. I wasn't hyper. I just couldn't focus. It wasn't until I found something that I really liked. If I had a passion for something, I could focus it all the way. Like when I found my passion for doing therapy in grad school, I got straight A's because I was able to focus because I actually liked what I was doing. And then I got a formal assessment like around 24 when I finally started like doing things for myself, actually going to a doctor on my own, going to a therapist on my own.
Got it. I was diagnosed when I was 35, which is last year. And it was a big discovery for me. It wasn't like surprising because I already kind of knew I had it because someone pointed out to me, I think you have ADHD. And then that kind of set in my mind back in 2020. And then I finally diagnosed myself last year. And it totally, everything just totally makes sense. Like how I would fidget, how I can't focus. And it just totally, everything just totally made sense for me.
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely like signs that you could definitely have ADHD. Have you ever got like a formal assessment?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, then yeah, you probably have it then. It's a superpower, but it's also stressful at times. Because when
It,
you really love something, it catches your attention, you'll research it to the ends of the earth and you just highly expand upon it. But if something has you have no little interest in, your brain's not even gonna give it like the time of day.
yeah. Well, last night I discovered that my writing, how I always tell myself I couldn't write, but writing is how I can express things on paper. And then I realized that I have similar styles to Christopher Nolan. Yeah,
Mhm.
last night, and I was just like, really, oh, like that's how I can turn everything that's inside me and express it outward, and how I can, just speak up about things I normally don't really like or want to talk about, able to communicate it through like writing.
Yeah, and the fact that you found an expressive outlet is basically what happened. And a lot of times that's what we need to kind of cope in general. We need different outlets to kind of help us decompress with things going on. And you can't just have one or two things because you can't do that one thing. You need to have multiple things or else, excuse me, it becomes a little bit harder to manage. Certain, like I know, like certain stressors, I need to do certain things that help me, depending what it is. If I had a really long day at work, I need to play certain video games that are very stressful technically, but I feel really relaxed playing it at the same time. Or when it comes to dealing with other things, I have to do other things. Like I know myself well enough to know what works and what doesn't, but it takes a lot of experimentation.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask you, how was your childhood like growing up?
Well, I think growing up, especially I grew up in like Garden Grove in like Orange County. So I really grew up to like Westminster, near the Phillip Ta in the Vietnamese community. And so most of my exposure was only towards the Vietnamese community. My parents, came during the Vietnam War. And when you come to America, they double down on their culture. That's all they had. So they kind of stuck to their people, essentially. It made sense. So growing up, I was raised like they they raised me like we were still in Vietnam. You know, my parents met in an internment camp. My grandfather died during the Vietnam War. So they raised me like how they raised us like back in Asia, tradition, where punishment was beating, the bamboo stick, the chopstick sort of thing, or the verbally, or you gotta kneel on rice or kneel towards the wall and face it until like you correct your behavior. And that was conflicting, especially when you grow up watching like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Family Matters, and you see families talking and having connection and hugging, and it's like we want that because that's what we're exposed to because that's our culture. We are Americans. Everyone says like, oh, I'm Asian American, I'm this, I'm this. Like, no, you're American, just flat out. Because if I went back to Vietnam right now, would they call me Vietnamese? No, they call me American. You are Asian American, yes, but your core is you're still American. You have American values. And that was where it was different because I grew up in America, my parents grew up in Vietnam. The cultures are very different. So because of that, it clashed all the time. And it developed a lot of anger, resentment, because one, I didn't understand them and they didn't understand me.
Yeah, you just totally nail it to the T because how you were saying, about about the war, everything that happened in Vietnam and everything, and how they would like spank you. that was just me. That was exactly like me because my mom came from the Communist Party. And so she went through a lot of trauma. She
Hmm.
lost her parents at a young age, had to go to work, take care of sisters, like everything. And
Hmm.
once like someone goes through this trauma and they pass it on to the next generation, it's like a generational trauma. And then
Yep.
and then it's like I had a lot of resentment, like just like you have a lot of resentment towards my parents because like why am I getting spanked? And then like watching like Fresh Prince of Bel Air and like Full House, they talk about their feelings, and I always wanted that as a child. Like, how come my family can't just talk about it? Why does it have to be using hands and like throwing objects and stuff?
Exactly. Because in Vietnam, that was normal. And that's again, they're raising you for what they grew up with what they knew. And as a kid, you don't know that. You don't understand that. You don't have that level of like discipline or knowledge. All you know is I'm getting hit. And you don't understand why. And it's kind of weird when you talk to like your friends, or like your American friends, who are like just who are not from your culture. They're like, oh, I got sent to my room. You're like, and what else? It's like that's it. Like what you like what they still let you eat food? Like they didn't make you kneel? They didn't punish you? They're like, no, I got sent to my room. And you look at them like, that exists? And it makes it hard for you to kind of relate with other kids your age sometimes. And if anything, a lot of what I've noticed is growing up, a lot of the Asian kids, we would compare like battle scars. We would talk about our beatings like if it was like a symbol of pride. Like, oh, my dad beat me like this. Oh, my mom beat me like this. And we compare like, oh, we got hit with chopsticks. Oh, was it the broom or the wire, the copper wire? And it's kind of a weird dynamic. Like, why are we showing such pride and kind of creating connection through, well, the abuse we like occurred?
Yeah, it's very interesting how you said that because, like, growing up, I heard the word grounded and also on TV too about the word grounded. And I would just like, kind of like, oh, I never got grounded before. And I thought that was like, that was better. Like, I don't have to get grounded. But then
Yeah.
realized that, like, well, no, but instead of getting grounded, you get spanked for it.
Yeah. Or it's like, oh, you get paid for chores. I'm like, no, you don't. You do chores because you have to, because you live there.
And
It's
you don't even get allowances. I
no,
never.
no, what's an allowance? No, the only time you get money is what? New Year's, Christmas, birthday, and you have to save it up. And if you're lucky, like you get to spend. If not, your parents might just take it from you and hold on to it for you.
This is totally great because just being able to relate to your story and be able to talk to you, it just shows that we can all just, really relate to one another and understand where everyone comes from because everyone comes from a different family, but we all had similar stories to tell.
Really depending. Like it's not that we have similar stories. I think we have a lot of similar experiences, but it's very unique to each of us. For example, like, not every Asian family is collectivistic. Some are very individualistic. So it's like we can't put each other in that box, but at the very least, because we have certain experiences that we can kind of relate with each other, if anything.
Yeah, so can you describe how your parents were like a little bit more?
And that's a little hard, like, cause well, my parents were always working since I was like a kid. Like I started working for my dad like between I was like 12, and that was just kind of like the norm. So dad worked all the time, barely came home. When he came home, dinner was ready. My mom took care of us, but she also started like at a certain age, she started working with my dad. They had their own business and they were doing their best to make ends meet, sort of thing. And I have four siblings, so eventually at some point, like my mom left the like taking care of the younger siblings up to like my older brother and older sister. Well, she just focused on like making food and then cleaning a little bit and then working.
What did your dad do?
He made signs for a living. So the signs is like Yogurt Land in front of the store, or
Oh,
like Happy Nails. Like he made signs like that.
that's pretty awesome. So you mentioned that you work for your dad on doing that too, right?
Yeah, I would help him like do installations, like on weekends and stuff. And it was just kind of just something that you kind of did. Like I remember we slept in a mall one time, because we had a job to do, and we took like it took a long time to do it, so we ended up just sleeping inside the mall, and the whole night we were just installing the sign. And after we slept in the mall, we went home, and the next day I had school again, so I just went to school afterwards. Like that was my normal.
Got it. What age did you start working with your dad? You mentioned 12, right?
I think I roughly around 12, 13. It
Okay.
was pretty normal. They'd always take us to their work, whenever we went on a job site or I had a shop, and you just stayed there. And then when you weren't helping, then you were doing your own homework.
Did you ever get paid?
No, not until I was like 18, then my parents started paying me, but it wasn't that much either. They were like $100 a day sort of thing. It wasn't that bad. But growing up, since I was 18, I'd always have two jobs. Working for my parents on the weekends and then working like my own job.
That's pretty awesome that you started at a young age working. I didn't like. I was always I'm a late bloomer, so I didn't start until like I was like early 20s.
It was different because, I'm a boy. My dad has three sons, two daughters. So it was just kind of, he needed the help and it was free labor. Not really my choice to work at 12, but it's just something you just kind of did.
That's still pretty awesome though. And
Yeah,
how many I mean, are you the youngest or or second youngest?
I am, well, I come from a blended family. So I am, I was raised as the middle child, but I'm technically not the middle child. So that's just a little more convoluted. But out of five siblings, I'm number three, but I'm technically not the third child.
Got it.
Yeah.
Do you get along with your siblings?
Yeah, for the most part, we had some rough patches, especially since like I struggled with my own mental health growing up, so I didn't understand it. So in high school I had an emo phase, and so I was misunderstood, going through a lot of issues, and my family didn't understand that. I didn't follow like the certain social norms. I skateboarded, I had long hair, wore all black, listened to like punk rock music sort of thing, and I kind of went against the grain because of that. So, but as we got older, I have a better relationship with my siblings than before.
Got it. Were you the only one in the emo phase, or were your siblings too?
Mm, I'd say I was probably the only one with the emo phase, but I'm not really sure because I was in high school. I was so focused on myself. It's kind of hard to kind of notice others when you're internally struggling so much. You're not really super aware of the world around you and the impact you have on others sometimes, especially high school. High school is such a weird time for us.
Yeah, high school was a really weird time for me as well. Like I don't have a lot of friends growing up either, and I was always afraid to be alone too. So I always stuck with in freshman of high school. I stuck with my classmates, so the people that I knew, and then I'm really thankful that I had my friend for the next year, like the sophomore year, because she's like a grade lower than me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad that I had her there because otherwise I would be super lonely and alone and throughout the whole entire high school. And I think that's when I kind of lost my identity as well growing up because I was like, am I Asian? Am I Chinese? I don't know because people always ask me like, oh, are you mixed? Are you Filipino? Are you Thai? Are you Laotian? Are you Malaysian? And I'm just like, no, I'm Chinese. Like, you don't look Chinese. And that's when I lost my identity in high school.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's a rough age because high school was all about, we actually do care. Part of just growing up, we care about other people think about us and fitting in, wanting to feel accepted, and especially depending when you grow up. I grew up in an area that had decent diversity. Like I had Samoans, I had a couple Black, Mexican, white, and Asian there. So we were kind of exposed to each other. But it's also like I've noticed that a lot of people kind of stuck with their own race for the most part a lot of the times.
Yeah,
Now it's not the same, but definitely when I was in high school, people were definitely a little more segregated in what we did.
yeah. For me, like, in middle school, it was good because it was like a mixture of. It was like we had Hispanic, we have Chinese, we have Filipino, we have Blacks. Like it's all mixed,
Mm-hmm.
and so we got along with everyone. And it's like there's no like you don't think about race or color or anything like that in middle
Oh,
school. But when you get to high school, like I went to high school where it was like all predominantly mostly white. And so like I was like I at that age I was like, I want to be white. Like
hmm.
I don't like my Chinese heritage. I want to be white. And I it just like I guess it's because like it's to me it feels like they're more desired than being in your own skin, your own color. At that age, that's how I felt.
I can understand that. I experienced something similar, but not. I didn't want to be white. I just didn't like a lot of aspects of the culture I grew up in. I grew up in a very Catholic family. I didn't like that. I questioned too many things. I didn't like certain cultural values or certain cultural norms we did, and I didn't reject it. I just didn't understand it and I questioned it because I saw what I preferred. I preferred having a loving family. I preferred people that talked about their feelings. So like I felt I liked the idea of having support. So those values, I saw that and I liked it. And I, stereotypically, you saw that, and again, in like TV shows, and most of the people in TV shows are black or white, Americans. So you kind of cling to that. So I clicked into like the values of it, not really like the identity of it itself.
That totally makes sense because I didn't even want to be Chinese either. Like I'd rather be Japanese or any other Asian besides Chinese. Like I just didn't. I guess like I didn't understand what it means to be Chinese because when you go over when I go to China, they see me as the American,
Exactly,
and
because
they
you are.
and then sometimes they ask like, do you even know how to speak it? Sometimes,
Yeah.
and so it's like they see you differently in China. It's like if I go back to China, like I probably won't even fit in if I
Yeah.
go. And it's like it's even hard to fit in here sometimes too. But if you go back to China, it's even harder to fit in.
It is because when you go back there, you don't have the same cultural values because you grew up in America. You are American, just flat out. That's just how you are. You have American values. You see things a way American does. And the beauty of America is because it's a melting pot. Just because you see something that another culture has doesn't make them any less American than you. It's just, it's all accepted here for the most part. If you see something from Hispanic culture or Black culture that you like and you want to adopt, you have every single right to adopt that because you're exposed to it. And you go back to China or Vietnam, that's all you're exposed to. So that's all you know. But here you could pick and choose. If there's some things I don't like about my culture, but another culture, I can take it and I can get rid of the other ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you described it really well. And I really thank you for coming on this podcast because you have a lot of great things to say, and people needs to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually one reason I became a therapist because I want to be the person that I needed at that age. It doesn't matter like when I was 12, 13 and up, you go through a different life and these questions, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that had them. These struggles, especially with mental health or identity, sexuality, values, everything you start questioning. And the problem is when you have no answers, you get confused.
Yeah, I was confused for most of my life, and it was until I took the Asian American Studies in like first year in college. That's when I found my identity because I was like, whoa, Chinese American did this, Japanese American did this, and I was just like shocked because they never teach that to you in the history books.
Well, history is written by the victors. I mean, they point America as being this great country that we did all these things, but we also did a lot of horrible things to like Native Americans.
Yeah.
But we paint in a certain way, and that's understandable. Again, history is written by the victors. Whoever won gets to kind of dictate how history is written.
So how long did it take you to finally find your voice to like speak up about your stories?
I guess it really depends on how you look at it when it comes with like finding your voice. I've always been an outspoken person. I've always challenged the norm. I've always questioned everything and everyone in life. So I guess when it comes to When I was more confident, I think is when I started kind of being okay with who I am, where I didn't feel like I had to find this label. What does it mean to be Asian? What does it mean to be American? I wasn't stuck on the label or the identity of what it means to be. I just realized like I'm just me. I'm Christoph Ngo, and I was born in California. And anything past that, those things don't matter to me, anyways. So that's why I can speak up about what I think is my own truth. Because I personally believe that there's only one absolute truth in this world, that there are no absolute truths.
Yeah, you said it very well. And you know, like everyone, like, you know, has a voice. We just need to learn how to use our voice in a positive way. And it's really important for us to really be that stand for ourselves and also for other people who might not have that voice, to actually just be able to speak what's on their mind.
A lot of times we don't know what it means to have a voice because we were never allowed to have one as a kid. It's only when we start experimenting a little bit, pushing the boundaries here and there, setting boundaries. In fact, if I was going to be specific, when I start learning how to set boundaries, like really set boundaries, that's when I started learning that I have a voice, that I can say something. When I can, you know, push back and be confident about it and be okay with the consequences.
When did you learn to how to set boundaries?
I'm not gonna lie, like I didn't learn that until I truly set boundaries, but like, in a very healthy way, 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm 32 now, so like late 20s, and it's because we grow up setting boundaries like, hey, don't do this. But boundaries is more than just that. Boundary is, hey, don't do this, and I'm repeatedly telling someone, hey, if you do this, this will kind of happen. Not like an action have consequences thing or an ultimatum, but more of like, if this keeps happening, this will happen. Boundaries is having a communication and setting up a perimeter. You will not do this. If you do this, I will stop talking to you. And if they keep doing it, then you're setting the expectation. If you cross this, this will happen.
Yeah, that's really great that you learned how to set boundaries. And I feel like a lot of us learned that like later in our years, like maybe like late 20s or early 30s, because that was just like me. I just started learning this like just last year, how to set boundaries so people know like don't push it. And I had to learn to say no, because I guess like in my culture, like it's not okay for me to say no. I have to say yes, and my mom kind of pushes a lot, and so I have to say yes to her all the time. And then when I tell her that, hey, I'm actually like I'm getting picked on at work, like what do I do? And I turned to her, it's like 4 or 5 years ago, and then she told me like, stay quiet, put your head down, don't say anything. And because she thinks that something bad's gonna happen to me, and the manager is gonna continue to pick on me and then gang up other people to pick on me. But that's probably her story, her experience, not my story and my experience. And so I kind of altered the narrative, and I just told the manager like, hey, this manager is picking on me. Can you do something about that? Because I don't want to go home every day crying. Like, why am I always the victim? Why am I always getting picked on?
Yeah, and again, it's a class and culture. Your mom's Chinese. Maybe as a Chinese immigrating to America, she's an immigrant. You and me aren't immigrants. We're born here. We grew up everything American for the most part. We just had certain values that was from our own family. It's no different than any other American family having their own values that they passed on from generation to generation. It's how you want to view it. And again, the more you understand that, the more you can kind of learn to let go. As soon as I start to understand my parents and understand their journey, where they came from, that also gave me the choice to let go. It doesn't change what they did and how they did it. It wasn't right, but I can change my relationship with them. I decide what type of relationship I want with my parents now. I'm an adult now. You could decide, oh, my parents did this as a kid, and that's why I do this. You don't have to keep doing it though. You can change. You're an adult. And you can't always expect someone like, oh, I won't talk to my parents unless they apologize for doing this. That's not fair to them or to you.
Yeah, that's really true because, you know, we don't know what our parents went through. And, even though they tell us stories about their past, we still don't we don't still don't know their full story or that full experience of how they lived during that time. Because especially like if your parents came from, moved here from the like through the whole Vietnam War and like came here to just to come to America just to have a better life, and my parents also came here just to have a better life too, but we don't know their full story of what they went through.
And they don't want to talk about it, and that's their right.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about my parents and what they've been through. I've only heard stories, but with my aunts talking, you hear and you pick up. But if I were to ever sit down and ask them what happened, they won't say it. And it sucks because I want to know their history, but it's the best you can do.
Yeah, like last year, it was during Thanksgiving, my mom yelled at me. And then all I did was ask the doctor, like, because sometimes she likes to argue a lot. And I just asked, I told the doctor, like, is this arguing, and like yelling, that does it constitute to, her heart problem? And the doctor said maybe. And then she got really mad, like, why would you say that? Like, it's like I can't say anything to a doctor or say anything about her because it sounds like I'm like attacking her or probing something from her past.
Yeah, or like you're airing out dirty laundry to people who shouldn't know or shouldn't be involved. Even though that's why a lot of people, like, I had a lot of friends who like their parents get mad at them when they go to therapy. Like, you shouldn't talk to strangers about the family business. Keep it in the family, sort of thing. And that sense of, I understand where it's coming from, but at the same time, like, you don't have to though. Like, if that's what you need to kind of process, that's fine. But I guess when it comes to Asian culture specifically and how they grew up, it's you keep everything hush hush.
Yeah, we keep everything hush hush. And like I remember when I first went to counseling in college, it was like when I was like 24, 25, my parents got really like upset, like, why would you go to counseling and why would they tell you this? And then I'm gonna go to your school and yell at this counselor. And then I was like, no, it's like they've been like babying me, like sheltering me to a point where like I just want my freedom, and I can't get my freedom because they kept me like in a small little bubble and where I can't really expand or like grow and stuff.
Yeah,
and I guess what they're trying to do is protect me.
Again, they had the best intentions. If can you imagine going to another country, you don't speak the language, and just literally starting over completely, where everybody around you doesn't look like you to a certain degree, and you're exposed to way too much compared to what you're used to. When you think it like that makes a lot of sense. Of course you want to protect your children. Of course you want to kind of be a little more conservative in how you do things, because you don't know how things are run here. You don't know how they do things here. You don't want to be in trouble.
Yeah. And that's what, that's why it took me so long to just speak up and talk about these things. And I remember last year, I posted a video of myself telling people that I tried to commit suicide when I was 13. And then I said, because they don't speak English, so they don't really understand it. And I said that for me, like, I used to be hanging out with people who don't really care about me, and they heard the word "don't care," and then they told my brother, and then they were like, "What do you mean? Like, we don't care about them? We care about them." But they didn't understand what I was saying. It's like I was around other people that didn't really care about me. Mm-hmm. And so we had like this long talk about this, and so they told me, like, why would you say this? Why would you do that? And my mom even said, like, Asians don't have mental health problems. Yeah, they they do. It's just that we don't talk about it. And I'm pretty sure, like, our parents probably have some sort of mental health problem, like depression or anxiety, that they don't even know because they don't know how to describe it, the feeling of it. But it's definitely like what we said earlier, about the body, how it reacts to anxiety and depression. We all feel it, but we just don't know that it's there.
There's actually a good book in regards to like that. It's called The Body Keeps Score. And it talks about how we have these physical reactions, especially when it comes to trauma. So it's actually a really good book. I would recommend you reading it. But you're right. I mean, I've been in this field I've been practicing 3 to 5 years at this point. My parents still don't really know what I do. They will also, you help crazy people. No. Do you even have Asian clients? Yes. But like, they're not Vietnamese, right? I'm like, no, they're Vietnamese. Like it's everybody. Do you know, it's just like, it's made up by white people, right? I'm like, no. But again, they don't understand. Like I've even had my aunts talk about like, oh yeah, I've done therapy, but it's not for me. And she said it's literally it's just a cultural thing.
You're so on point about about the crazy people part, because I remember when I was like younger, like maybe early 20s, we have a neighborhood friend who became a psychologist, and then she started to, and then my mom would tell me that, oh, she doesn't want to do this anymore because she's talking to these people who are crazy. And so that's how my mom always thought, like mental health problems, it results like those are like for the crazy people. And it's not true, because we all have mental health problems.
Yeah, I'm gonna say all, but we all struggle with our own things when it comes to our mental health and how we deal with things. You know, the brain is just like any other organ. If there's something wrong with it, then it kind of can be worked on, because it's so complex. You can't just give it medication and make it go away. That's what makes it so hard. And it's so different. It's also depending on each person's perspective and their lived experience.
Yeah. And growing up, I thought like people who have mental health problems, they're crazy, but they're not really crazy. And it's also like people who might have a form of mental health illness, but they're not crazy. It's just that they probably didn't have the right tools and access to the care that they need.
That's possible. I mean, some people are born with certain disorders. Like, some people are bipolar, or they have schizophrenia. Some of it's genetic and some of it is environment. It's like that nature versus nurture, which one it is. And it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I kind of wish my mom was a little generous, because I remember there was someone that I went on vacation with, and I actually loved her. Like I didn't know what it was, but she was different, and I think that she was autistic, but she was high functioning, and my mom thought she was crazy, and then she didn't like being around her because she thought she was crazy. But then even though I didn't know what it was, like I never been around autistic people, but I was very empathetic with her, and I was the only one that she listened to. Like she would not listen to her mom or anyone, and then she got scared of security guards on the cruise, because they thought that every time she goes off on her own, like the security guard would organize her face, and then they would take her back to her room, and she gets really upset. And so like I have to go to her room or find her to calm her down, and like just talk to her and communicate to her. And that's where I come from. It's like I'm very empathetic. Like I don't care if like she might be a little embarrassing sometimes, because she starts yelling or like doing like just like flailing her hands sometimes. That's what she does. But I had this special like heart for her. Like my heart goes out to her, because that's not her issue. That's not her fault that she's that way.
Yeah. And autistic people can have, there's certain quirks about them. They're like neurodivergent. And people who are neurodivergent, they just kind of think a little bit differently. And we realize that autism is on a spectrum now. you know? So there's different levels of it, and we're still trying to figure out. There's no clear-cut way of defining it. That's the only thing.
Yeah. Well, is there any, before we wrap up, is there any last thing you want to say?
I know, like, you know, I admire you for really be wanting to kind of speak your language or kind of speak your truth. And it's not easy for someone to do something like that. You can get it's to put yourself out there into the world. It's very scary. It's very intimidating because you know, you leave yourself vulnerable, and it can be scary. But the fact that you're still doing it, you want to have other people hear your voice. You're letting people like me kind of speak to you and just kind of like share our experiences and to kind of create that type of space for people. I think is very admirable.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my mission, is being able to understand where everyone comes from. And, you know, not just Asian Americans, but also I want to speak to the Black community, the Hispanic, even the white community, just so that we can all have a collective understanding of each other.
Yeah, in my opinion, we're actually not that different than we really think we are. I think we want to feel special, and I think everybody grow up. We want to feel that way, but when you start to learn that you're not special, like you as a person, you're not special. What you do is special, but you are not special, and that was a sobering fact I had to learn. Like being told that, like, hey, dude, you're not special. You're not special. Like you're not this unique individual or something like that. You're just another person who struggles with the same thing everybody else does. Your pain might be uniquely yours, but it's not like you're the only one who's dealt with grief or loss.
Yeah. Well,
You know?
if you look at the movies, how it's written, it's not just written for just, you know, white actors or actresses. It's actually catered to the individual. It's like how in the beginning of the movie, they, you know, they start have a normal life, and then things get out of like things get a little haywire throughout the whole entire movie. And there's like this person can be a jerk in the beginning of the movie, and then realize that they're losing, you know, their friends or family, everyone around them, and they start to hit those like a slump. That's all of us. That's just like, if there's no like, you know, maybe if there's no like, if you don't see just color, I can actually see the film. It's all about the human aspect. It's not really catered to just one race.
You're right. And like at the end, you can always relate to almost everyone. Certain things you cannot. For example, like Black people have a certain type of hairstyle. We cannot relate to that. That is their own unique experience. And some people have that culturally, you know? So, or that's just kind of who you know, within your race or ethnicity. So that's understandable. But for the most part, when it comes to emotions, we all experience very similar things growing up differently, but we still experience similar things.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, I just want to thank you for hopping on the Zoom call and spending time to talk about your story. And I just appreciate you for sharing your stories with us today.
Yeah, you know, I would like to say always a pleasure, never a chore.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
To tune in to more episodes, please go to anchor.fm/We Speak Loud. And also follow me on Instagram at We Speak